With the NFL season coming to a close, NFL fans from all around the country are wondering how well did their team do this season. In this video, we will be going through each team's season and giving every single one of them a grade to summarize it all. For some teams, they may have earned their great grade because of their great playoff run, or they had a lot of great wins. For some teams, it might have just been because they found the right coach and quarterback, something they have been trying to do for so long but have just got it this season. Some teams may receive lower grades for the exact same reasons that other teams get higher grades. The scale is based on entirely their expectations and what actually happened in the season. And although the main purpose of this video is to grade teams on how well they did this season, the moves they have already made to set the precedent for next season might alter their final grade. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. The first team we will be grading is the Patriots. So for the Patriots, I don't know much about them, so we're just going to be grading their team for this year. And Drake May actually seemed to be pretty good. So I think he will be the franchise QB going forward. So that is a plus on their record. However, I was very harsh on the Patriots because of their lack of wide receivers and skill players. And also their O-line and defense too weren't very good. But they will be getting a C- for this year, and I think they can definitely turn their grade up in the next few years. The next team we're grading is the Eagles. It will be a very rare occurrence if the Super Bowl winning or championship winning team does not get an A+ on their season. The Eagles will be getting an A+ this season since they won the Super Bowl, and that's kind of the reason why they would get that kind of grade. There was nothing really going against them. They had rising stars all over the team, and Zach Bond, Josh Sweat, which really showed out in the game against the Chiefs, and Jalen Hurts is taking big leaps to becoming a superstar quarterback. I honestly don't see anything that hurt them this year. The next team we're going to be grading is the Indianapolis Colts, and this is a fun one because I gave him a C, but only because that's basically what Anthony Richardson is. This entire grade will be based on Anthony Richardson because he's not a bust, we know that, but he also isn't as good as expected. So they can't really move on from the learning season stage of, well, is this the quarterback or is this not? I still don't trust him very much, but I think that he can be. They're just going to have to prove it next year. So this season is a C. It's kind of like a wasted season of all their young guys, but it doesn't really matter. We're going to be grading the Saints next, which is another team that's pretty interesting because they had an amazing week 1 and week 2, which were insane. You could have argued that they were the Super Bowl favorites those 2 weeks, getting huge blowouts, but after that, they ended 5-12. And while they did fire their coach, I still think that Derek Carr is not the future of this team. He's just not playing that well to get to their potential, which was those week 1 and week 2 games. Even though those opponents didn't turn out very good, I still think that was a great performance by the Saints, which boosts their grade all the way up to a C. And the next team we will be grading is the Baltimore Ravens. So the Baltimore Ravens have a little bit of a dilemma on their hands when it comes to giving them a grade, especially a good grade, because they didn't win the Super Bowl. And now most teams could usually get a good grade even without winning the Super Bowl, but the Ravens just had a great duo in Lamar and Henry, and the O-line and coaching were insane to make them the Super Bowl favorites, in my opinion. Although the defense took a step back, I still think they had Super Bowl expectations this year, especially since Lamar was doing better this season than he was in his last season where he won the MVP. Now we're going to be grading the Green Bay Packers. For the Packers, I gave them a B+, and there's not really much to talk about with them. They're just kind of an all-around good team, which is why I put a playoff season in there, because they deserve to make the playoffs. Jordan Love and Malik Willis both got wins under their tenures, and the defense had improved mightily. They were great compared to last season when they weren't doing so well and giving up really good numbers to very bad QBs. That loss to the Bears was definitely very bad, but this team is a well-crafted team from top to bottom. They get a B+. The next team we're going to be grading is the Raiders, and they felt my wrath pretty badly with an F. I don't 100% think they deserve an F, especially in the editing process. I think I was a little bit too harsh on them. But to be honest, they're just not a good team at all. I mean, they have no answer at QB. I know a lot of you guys will be saying, well, why are you giving them an F? They're doing all this with very bad QBs. Well, that's the thing. They have very bad QBs. They went from a playoff team to a team like this in just a few years. They're just a bad team. This is one of their rebuilding seasons, and I don't know how well it actually went, but they really need a QB. Okay, here we go. Well, if you would have told me that this team, with all their generational talent that they have, wouldn't be making the playoffs, I wouldn't have believed you. I probably would have laughed at you. Now, if you would have told me that this team went last in their division, I would have called you crazy. But here we are. The San Francisco 49ers managed to finish worse than the following teams: Arizona Cardinals, Seattle Seahawks, and Los Angeles Rams. That's crazy. I can't believe they had this bad of a season, but to be honest, their injuries just plagued them. I mean, if you asked me how well this team would actually do with healthy players, I wouldn't even be able to tell you. Christian McCaffrey didn't do as well when he came back from injuries. I don't know if that will be the end of his dominant run, but you have to think, whatever the moves that they make this offseason could be very costly to whether or not they can still be a playoff team. Okay, I just disrespected the Rams very badly, but I'm about to pull an Uno reverse card and just keep on praising them. Because one, they won the division, and they were a playoff team last year. But with the 49ers doing as bad as they did, the Rams made sure that they stepped up and took the NFC West. They have a great young defense. Their defense was full of rookies that shined, from the cornerbacks and safeties to the defensive line. They were great all over. And they even competed with Super Bowl contenders. With a statement season like this one, you have to give them an A- for their grade. And while we're at it, I think we can do both LA teams. We're going to be grading the Chargers, which basically was kind of just copy-paste from the Rams almost. They get an A-, and they were a playoff team this year, which was a great first season from their new head coach, which is making an atmosphere shift. He has been generational for them. Just with the coaches that they've had before, I think this is a massive upgrade. However, I don't know with Herbert's playoff loss if he is the long-term answer if they want to go and reach their potential. So they're going to need to figure out something here, but I give them an A-. We're going to be grading the Lions. The Lions, I think they were the Super Bowl favorites this year along with the Ravens. If you want to say that only one can be the Super Bowl favorite, they were easily the favorite to win the NFC because they're a good team all around, man. Like, they are a great team in almost every position. They won most of their games in dominant fashion, blowing out AFC South teams by like 40 to 30 points. And this was supposed to be their year, but they lose the divisional round. So you guys can call them frauds, call them whatever, but I think this was a good team for them compared to what they've had the last 20 years. Let's talk about the Steelers. The Steelers came into the season with a QB battle between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, which is not a very good, promising situation if you are a Steelers fan. However, they did get another winning record. You know, Mike Tomlin, he can get you there, but he can't get you to where you want to be. He can get you to the playoffs, but honestly, they're just a wild card team at best. I don't see this team doing much under Mike Tomlin's tenure. You can call me a hater, but honestly, I don't see it. They need to win a playoff game. Now we're going to be grading the Falcons. The Falcons, well, they were projected to win the division by a lot of people, and to be honest, I think that was Kirk Cousins' fault, but they do have a good quarterback in Michael Penix Jr. that will lead them to hopefully some playoff success in the next few years. They can't win the crucial games, and this is one big thing where it happened in the last week of the season. They needed to get a win against the Panthers to move on to the playoffs with a Buccaneers loss. And even though the Buccaneers did win, the Falcons still couldn't win their last game of the season. With a wide open NFC South next season, I think the Falcons could be the division winners. Let's talk about the Tennessee Titans. The Titans were the under-the-radar bad team this year. With the Giants and Browns doing as bad as they did, honestly, I was surprised to see that the Titans were the one that ended up with the number one overall pick. While they certainly don't need a quarterback as bad as some other teams, Will Levis is definitely not the future of this team. They do have a horrendous team on both sides of the ball, so I think that they will get the best player available at the number one position, which is, well, basically anybody in the draft. This team was really bad, but I do see them getting better next year. But there is one team that I don't know how well they're going to do, and that's the Giants. The Giants, they had a successful tank, which is really the only successful thing about them this year. They need more than a QB to make this team good. And this is one point I'm going to stress a lot about this team because honestly, Malik Neighbors is like one of the only good parts about this team. They traded for Brian Burns, which honestly was a good deal at the time, but Brian Burns has not lived up to the expectations that he had. I'm going to give this team a D+ for this year, but I think you could argue their grade up and down a little bit. Let's grade the Bills. So when it comes to grading the Bills, the biggest question is how much of an impact should not winning the Super Bowl be on their grade? For me, I give them an A- because to be honest, they weren't truly the Super Bowl favorites. While it is pretty disappointing that they didn't make it past the conference championship round, they still beat a great Ravens team. But what surprises me the most about this team is the way their wide receivers stepped up, especially during the end of the season. Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman have been great wide receivers for Josh Allen to throw the ball to, and that is not something I would have told you at the beginning of the season. They definitely deserve a good grade. We're going to be grading the Jets, which is the exact opposite of a good grade. I gave them an F. First of all, what happened to the playoff season that they were destined to have? Now, this has been projected for them the past 2 years, and I've never bought it. I know everybody's going to have hindsight bias when it comes to the Jets, but truly, ever since Aaron Rodgers has gone to the Jets, I have not believed in them at all. They can't just jump up 20 spots in rankings just because Aaron Rodgers is on their team. What surprises me the most is that Devontae Adams didn't even make a huge impact on their team. They were that bad. They honestly have no plan for the future, as we've just heard that Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams are both going to be released. I think they're going to be in a huge rebuilding cycle, which is not something you want to hear if your team hasn't made the playoffs in almost 15 years. Cleaning house will be able to make a lot of improvements, but to be honest, the owner needs to go. And I mean needs to go. Well, now that I've criticized the team to obliteration, now I'm going to praise the team so much that you're going to call it glazing, because I'm giving the Washington Commanders an A+. To be honest, I wasn't expecting anything like this from the Commanders this season. They've just been a well-rounded team overall. Making the NFC Championship game was not something I had in my forecast at all for this team, and I think Jaden Daniels was the reason they got there. Them getting Deebo Samuel just proves that they're trying to make this a repetitive thing, but I don't know how well they're going to do next year. I don't think they'll have the same amount of success as they did this year. Next, we're going to be grading the Houston Texans. If I had to describe this team in one word, it would be stale. I mean, they had a playoff season, but they were plagued by injuries. So badly that CJ Stroud was performing worse than Bryce Young, and Bryce Young was benched like half of the season. Now, me as a biased Panthers fan can even admit that CJ Stroud is better than Bryce Young, but still, it just goes to show you how bad the injuries actually were in Houston. CJ Stroud's sophomore slump is honestly something that could be a problem if he doesn't perform like he did in his rookie year next season. I expect this team to do way better, but maybe not like their glory days when CJ Stroud was a rookie. Okay, for this next team, I'm going to be trying to be as unbiased as I can be, but to be honest, there is a lot of good things I have to say about this team. And while this team made major improvements throughout the season, their defense was historically bad and gave up the most points ever given up in an entire season. The main highlight of their season was Bryce Young's improvement. He definitely won the most improved award. He came from being benched in week 2 to finally scoring numbers that we would see out of a number 1 overall pick. And while I definitely think he needs to prove himself next season, he'll have an easy time of doing that considering what he's already done this season, but his defense is going to need to step up. Speaking of terrible defenses, why don't we go ahead and grade the Bengals? This team is an example of why you have to be good on both sides of the ball if you want to win championships. Their offense is always trying to catch up to the amount of points their defense lets up, which gives them a 9-8 record, which is still impressive. This team has one of the greatest offenses I've seen in a while. The fact that you can pull off a winning record with this kind of defense just shows how good the offense was. Unfortunately, this offense probably won't stay together, as the contract demands for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins will be super high in the next few years. I gave this team a D+ because they have wasted their offense this season. Almost any other team could have made the playoffs with ease with that kind of offense, which is a shame for the Bengals. I hope they do better next season. Now it's time to move on to the Bears. For the Bears, it's pretty simple. Was Caleb Williams the guy? And I think he was. So I give this team a B. Obviously, they didn't make the playoffs, and they weren't really even close, but they did keep it competitive with many teams that did make the playoffs. So I have to give them credit for that, but considering their record at the start of the season, this team really disappointed my expectations. Ever since the Commanders lost, it felt like it wasn't the same. They just took a loss after loss after loss, and to be honest, I feel pretty bad for Bears fans, because they were totally expected to make the playoffs this year. We'll talk about a surprise. The Broncos actually made the playoffs. They almost had a 10-year drought, which is crazy to think of. I mean, sure, losing in the wild card isn't ideal for every team, but, I mean, that's the best they've done since, 2015. Bo Nix has really revived this team, and to be honest, it's not just him. They still got guys like Patrick Surtain, which won the Defensive Player of the Year award. So, I think this team has a promising future, but I'm only going to give them a B+ this year because I think they could have done a little bit better than they did. However, I wouldn't say this is a failed season at all. Now it's time to talk about what a failed season actually looks like. When you have double-digit wins in this day and age, it's a little bit easier than it was in decades before. It's still unlucky to not make the playoffs out of all that. I mean, this team definitely didn't deserve to make the playoffs, but this is the second winning season they've had in a row where they haven't been able to clinch a wild card spot. All this team had to do was just win enough games to evade the Rams' comeback, but they couldn't do that. Even though they did beat the Rams at the end of the season, I still give this team a B because they didn't make the playoffs. Just hope they don't get rid of all their wide receivers. Now, another team that ended on sort of the same note, in the same division, we got the Cardinals. Like the Seahawks, the Cardinals took advantage of an injured division and popped out a few wins in the beginning of the season that made them the favorites to win the division. However, with the 49ers and Rams getting a little bit better by the end of the season, the Cardinals could not keep up the success to make sure they won a playoff spot. Ever since the loss to the Rams in the wild card, in 2022, this team has really never felt the same. I hope this team can get back on track, but to be honest, they feel like a joke. I'll give them a C+. Well, guess who's at the bottom? Well, when I mean bottom, I mean like second place. Well, we all like to make fun of the Chiefs for being so close to a three-peat and then choking it away at the last second. This team still did really good. They were on the verge of 16 wins, which I think they would have had if they actually played their starters in their last game. That's really good for a team. And to be honest, I don't think we give them enough credit for it, but I mean, it is what it is. In the end, they didn't win the final showdown, and that's on them. So I am very glad that they did not win the Super Bowl, but I still think that they were a great team. Now on to a team that I would have given an A+ if it weren't for those last few weeks that they played. The Minnesota Vikings did really well this season and exceeded my expectations. I honestly think nobody would have been able to predict how well they did. First of all, 14 wins from a guy named Sam Darnold. That's just something that you can't really bet on. That was a crazy run by him. Now he's getting paid millions of dollars by the Seahawks to be their starting QB. This is really a turnaround for his career. Now, aside from that, they really have to find out whether or not J.J. McCarthy is the answer. Give this team a solid A, and I think that their success from this season can translate into the next season. So, well done, Minnesota Vikings. Okay, so this grade on the Browns will be a little bit outdated. I did give them a D, but one of the pluses I put for them was that they could get good trade assets from Myles Garrett, and as you've seen, Myles Garrett has a new contract, so that's a little bit outdated. But besides that, this team was really bad. They were in contention with the Titans and the Giants for the worst team in the league. And I know playing in the AFC North is tough, but this team felt directionless throughout the entire season. They have no way of rebounding in the next few years, and this is going to be a tough rebuild for them. Now, for a team that keeps getting away with the playoff spot, we're going to be grading the Buccaneers. Congratulations, you won the division again. Really, nobody actually even challenges you guys. Now, I know the Falcons definitely gave you guys a scare, but you guys probably felt confident throughout the entire season since week 1 that this division was meant to be yours. And although you guys do make the playoffs every year, it really is just a wild card and out kind of situation. You're really just worsening your draft pick. I think they really need to rip the Band-Aid off. And that doesn't mean an entire rebuild, but I think Todd Bowles definitely needs to go. That's my grade for them. They get a B-. Oh, this team exists. So the Jaguars aren't really the Cinderella run they used to be. Trevor Lawrence used to be balling out in the playoffs, winning 25 plus freaking comeback victories and all of that, competing with Patrick Mahomes, and you get it. This team used to be a lot better than they are now. To me, it felt like the direction to go after Trevor Lawrence got injured halfway through the season was to go for that number 1 overall pick. They didn't really do that, and they kind of feel the consequences for it, but I still think they're in a good position to rebuild. They still get a D-, though. They should have gone for the number 1 overall pick. Well, I really need to go all in on detailing this team. The Cowboys get an F because, considering what they did last season, this season feels like a total failure for them. I mean, 7-10 after being the best team in the NFC for a little bit last year is crazy. I mean, I'm not the only one that thought that this team was going to break the NFC East curse and win the division twice in a row. This team won way too many games to get a good draft pick, and they won too few games to actually make the playoffs. So now here they are in a lukewarm situation. Are they even rebuilding? We don't know. We don't know what they're going to do. They're kind of screwed over right now. And it feels like they got nowhere to go. They haven't done really anything in free agency, even though that could change any day. If this team can get their next few moves right, I think they'll be in a good situation. But until then, Jerry Jones needs to sell the team. The last team we're going to be grading is the Dolphins. And like I said earlier in the video, a lot has changed since the ending process has started. Originally, I was just going to go on a huge rant about Tyreek Hill wanting to leave after he was kind of the problem. But instead, we're just going to talk about how well this team did, even though Tua was kind of out. And I think he needs to retire, but I think this team will do a lot better next year. And I think he won't get as many concussions as he did this year and the years prior. So I think that he'll be fine, but I do recommend he retires if he is watching this video. Overall, this team should be better next year, but I really wish Tyreek Hill played the same way he did last year. I think he's probably not going to be the same again, but it is what it is. They get a B-. Alright, this is my season superlatives, where I give awards based on anything, honestly. And our season least valuable player goes to, drumroll please, Jerry Jones. Well, you were probably expecting that, so we can move on. The best game of the season, I think, is the Bills and Ravens. I didn't really watch some of the other games, but overall, one that I actually remember watching is the Bills and Ravens, and that was a good game. I think Mark Andrews definitely sold the Ravens, but I think everybody believes that. We have the funniest moment of the season, and I kind of made this a little bit more general, and anything Will Levis related kind of wins it. You saw the amount of memes that he was having week per week. It was so funny. Now, the Nobody Cares About Your Team award, this award will go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Honestly, I didn't hear anything about the Jacksonville Jaguars aside from Trevor Lawrence's injury. I think this team was just under the radar. Nobody really cared about them. And the season MVP goes to Jamar Chase. You would understand if you saw my fantasy season this year. I didn't televise this league that I actually won the championship, but I did make a video about it in my shorts feed. So go check that out. Alright, so that's it. After over 2 months of planning this video out, I hope this was worth it for you guys. I'm sorry that I haven't uploaded in a while. This is what I've been working on. And I have some other video ideas I'm really excited to upload and show you guys soon. They'll be coming out soon, and I think they'll be pretty fun. This video was a project for me considering what I've done before. This type of editing and this long of video is something that I don't really do often, but I really would love to do a lot more. I think it was really fun making this video, and it definitely should do really well compared to my other videos, but I don't really know how well this is actually going to do. I saw that my NFL Battle Royale video, the last episode I did make, got like 13,000 views, which is something that I really wish I would have kept on doing, but I didn't really feel the interest for it anymore, and I thought I wasn't getting the views. It turns out I was really wrong. So thank you guys so much for watching that video, and we'll have a different type of series next season that comes out, and until then, we'll just be reviewing some marble-based content and stuff like that, but we'll still have a lot more football stuff coming out in the future. If you've made it this far, consider yourself a Film Enterprises OG. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.